how money flows through your life in your household, whether you go to work and you have an employer who pays you as a W-2 income, whether you get paid as a contract laborer, whether you run your own business like Nate and I do. Your personal ecosystem can and should be treated like a banking system. And that's one of the biggest bridges to help people walk over early on. When they hear the word banking, they think, oh, I'm out of this because I'm not a business owner or I don't understand banking. Let's simplify it. Money's going to flow. It's got to reside somewhere and someone's going to control it.
If you are 40 years old right now, and let's say you have 25 working years left and you're making $100,000 a year, that means for the next 25 years, roughly, you're going to have $2.5 million flow through your hands. What you have to ask yourself is, how much of that money do I want to keep in my family? That's what controlling the banking function means. And we can teach you how to keep all of that in your family, plus some.
Money's just a tool. How you use it in your life, how you treat it, how you think about it is going to either make what you do better, or if you're a terrible person, it's just going to make you and allow you to be terrible more often. It just exemplifies or personifies who you already are.
You know, money doesn't change your character. It just magnifies who you already are. So if you're a dirtbag, and you're going to be a dirtbag with money. If you're someone who has a servant heart, then you're just going to be a bigger servant. So it's just a way that we express who we are.
Welcome to the Cashflow Legendz podcast with your hosts Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
Welcome back to Cashflow Legendz. Nate and I are going to do our next step in walking through Nelson's 5th edition of Becoming Your Own Banker. This book plays a foundational role in all that we've done over the last 8 years. Our mindset, our paradigm shift on how money really works, Nate, not how we've been taught to believe money has to work. And there's a quote on the section we talked about last time that I'll start with for this, and it's a Will Rogers quote. The problem in America isn't so much what people don't know. The problem is what people think they know that just ain't so. What they think they know that just ain't so. And let's go ahead and just get this out of the way. Nate and I used to think we knew what just ain't so. So, Nate, there's a saying that Garrett Gunderson uses a lot about the rules of the game and winning and playing. Touch on that real quick as we segue into Becoming Your Own Banker at the beginning of the book.
Well, if you are breathing and you are listening to this podcast and you live in the United States, then we are speaking specifically to you because you operate by a certain set of rules. And some of those rules may have been established by you. Some of those rules may have been established by someone else. But the reality is we all live by some set of rules. Now, there is a set of rules that the financial institutions have set up and created long, long ago that makes it very difficult to operate outside of those rules. The Federal Reserve was established in 1913. Income tax code came around at that time as well. And so we're all subject to a certain set of rules, but the financial institutions are not playing by the same rules that they tell us to play by. And so we are all in this game of life. And the reality is we have the ability to create some rules once we understand the rules that are being imposed on us and the opportunity to change the rules that are being imposed on us to a degree. We have the ability to create the rules to win, and then we just get to go play the game.
Yeah. And anybody who's listened to any of our other episodes, you're going to hear us. We'll refer to Garrett Gunderson, but let's do some the connection game. Garrett was mentored in many ways by one of our mentors, Trent Fortner. Trent Fortner spent time with Nelson Nash in the early 90s, who wrote Becoming Your Own Banker, which we're doing a book walkthrough. Brock, who is one of our partners on this podcast, his dad is Trent, and all of our mentors, Mike Everett and Chris Bay, James Nethery, Ryan Griggs, Garrett Gunderson in person now, they all have been connected to this mindset related to becoming your own banker that connects to dividend paying whole life insurance, which has been around for 200 plus years, which predates 1913, which Nate just referenced with the Federal Reserve and the income tax law. So it is not a product of the income tax law. It predates the income tax law, which is a big piece to understand. Nelson makes this what seems to be bold statement. I remember reading it for the first time, Nate, and really it blowing my mind, where he says it's believed that in America, if we redistributed all wealth equally, that after a short period of time, within 10 years, that 97% of all the money would be under the control of 3%. Now, he then goes on to say, suppose there's no way to ever really measure that for sure, but he doesn't think it'd be a stretch to say 75% would be under the control of 25%. And you will hear us reference the Pareto principle often, which is there's an 80-20 or a 20-80 almost everywhere. Fluctuates up and down, but you kind of hear that. So why do you think, Nelson asked the question, but I'm asking you, Nate, why do you think that phenomenon would happen or is true?
Most people don't understand how money works. Plain and simple. And
Yep.
you know, Nelson makes the points that people know next to nothing when it comes to the process of banking or the importance of understanding that process. And we quote this so often. Nelson said that everyone should be in two businesses, the one you make your living in, and banking. And banking is often more important than the one you make your living in. In fact, he even said banking is the most important business in the world. Without it, all business comes to a screeching halt.
Let's touch on that, Nate. We're entrepreneurs, we're business owners, but I want to back up because we're only talking to a small group of people if we just stop there. In every person's household listening to this in America, how money flows through your life in your household, whether you go to work and you have an employer who pays you as a W-2 income, whether you get paid as a contract laborer, whether you run your own business like Nate and I do, your personal ecosystem can and should be treated like a banking system. And that's one of the biggest bridges to help people walk over early on. When they hear the word banking, they think, oh, I'm out of this because I'm not a business owner or I don't understand banking. Let's simplify it. Money's going to flow. It's got to reside somewhere and someone's going to control it. Period. If you look at all of your financial decisions as an adult, as a young adult, as a soon to be adult, those things hold true. Money's got to flow. It's going to reside somewhere and somebody's going to control it. When we know those things, the next question is, and Nelson made this point, and I underlined it in my book, how much of the banking function do you and I control as it relates to our needs? That's not overcomplicated. So if you're buying a vehicle, how much of that process can you fully control? The amount you're paying, the amount you're going to repay, the interest rate that you're going to pay, how much of that can you control? And Nate, we're 8 years in and we reread Nelson's books and it still makes us go, man, that is wild. But as you read Becoming Your Own Banker, Nelson said all the answers to the game were in front of him the whole time. He just didn't know it. Paraphrased. He didn't say it exactly that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what jumps out that there?
Well, let's say generously, the way Nelson described it, let's say generously people are saving 10% for savings and investments. And when I think about control, I think about preservation.
Mm.
And so when we're talking about control, if we link it to preservation, you think about the money that flows through your life, what percentage of that money would you say that you truly have control over? What percentage of that money do you truly have the ability to preserve? Would you rather get a higher rate of return on a smaller sliver of the money that's flowing through your life? Or would you rather have guarantees at a lower rate of return, but on a higher percentage of the money that's flowing through your life? Because a higher rate of return on a smaller amount of money, there's no guarantee there. Markets go up, markets go down, but you also increase your risk profile along the way. Whereas what we're talking about doing is preserving a larger percentage of the money that's flowing through our life, so that when opportunities do show up, we have the ability to take advantage of those.
So Nate, another way to walk through that great point is just to simply ask any household, out of all the money that you make each year, how much of it do you keep and have control over for things that matter to you the most throughout that year and the next year and the next year and the next year? And what we find is you can reverse engineer that, and said the same way, how much of your money that you create that comes into your life do you keep? Now, we're not just talking about savings, are we, Nate? Because savings is just cash in a bank to most Americans. And it's only as good as how long it stays there. The minute you spend it, it is going into someone else's place that they hold money. So the key separator of the 75-25 we referred to earlier is, if it is 25% would control 75% of the money, those 25% know something that you and I didn't know or don't know. And it's really that simple. They have a much better understanding of how to control the banking function in their life. So Nate, the average savings rate right now in America, as we're recording this, I think it's around 3-4%, roughly. So said another way, if my household earns $100,000 of income that comes into our life, we're only keeping 3,000 to 4,000 of it. And that's not counting if it has to be spent on something later, emergency, a dishwasher, a vacation, a down payment on a car. And then where does that money go, Nate? When that cash gets transferred, what occurs? Or gets
Well,
paid?
so when it gets transferred, that means someone else is now given the ability to earn interest on it, and you've lost the ability to earn interest on it.
Yep.
And the beauty of controlling the banking function is the ability to keep constant pressure on money that continues to flow through your life.
Good stuff, Nate. Good stuff. So Nelson makes this great point, and it really simplified it for me. If I would go back and I could talk to myself years ago, I would probably sit here for a minute and really lean into this. There is only one pool of money in the world. And Nelson does a great comparison here to kind of help us wrap our mind around it, and detaches us from money for a minute. And he talks about one source of water, which is the ocean, and how much of the world is made up of water, and how it will all inevitably make itself back to water, to the ocean, and how vital it is if we don't have water. Reminds me of that quote from, is it Zig Ziglar, Nate, about money, or is that Jim Rohn?
Yeah. Zig Ziglar said that money isn't everything, but it ranks right up there with oxygen.
Right. So what I love about that quote and Nelson's point about money and water and how it all comes back to somewhere and somebody's going to control it is also this reality that money is not bad in and of itself. Nelson spends the first half of this 92-page book, which ends up really being about 80 pages when you're all said and done, talking about behavior and mindset, because he realized in his own journey, when he was on his knees praying to the Lord, please help get me out of this mess that I've created in the late 80s when interest rates skyrocketed and he was over leveraged and nobody wanted to buy the land, because when you're over leveraged and interest rates skyrocket, you can't get the price you wanted when the economy's treating you well with money by design. Okay. He said all the answers were right in front of him. So Nelson doesn't shy away from his relationship with the Lord, neither do we. But we also don't shy away from saying humbly that money's just a tool. How you use it in your life, how you treat it, how you think about it is going to either make what you do better, or if you're a terrible person, it's just going to make you and allow you to be terrible more often. It just exemplifies or personifies who you already are. Now, you say it a different way sometimes about dirt bags or something that I like.
Yeah, it's been said different ways, but ultimately, um, money doesn't change your character; it just magnifies who
There you
you
go.
already are. So if you're a dirt bag, then you're going to be a dirt bag with money.
Mhm.
If you're someone who has a servant heart, then you're just going to be a bigger servant.
That's right.
So it's just a way that we express who we are.
That's good. A book we read early on in our journey, Nate, of becoming readers and applying what we read, which was a big change in our own journey. If you aren't a reader or a learner, then you're not going to grow. That sounds real blunt, but it's the epitome of succumbing to the arrival syndrome, that you've got it all figured out and it's as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, and let me just say, if you're one of these people who you just feel like you're getting older, like you may not be that old, but you just feel like you're getting older, start reading.
Mm.
It'll make you younger.
Wow, Nate, I've never heard you say it that way. That was good. What it really does is it allows all of us to know that we're all on a similar journey with different skill sets, and we're all here for a purpose. And it's a big purpose well beyond our imagination. Which brings me to one of my favorite things that Nelson says on page 63 of Becoming Your Own Banker, that really, once you begin to understand this, it's a practice in logic, imagination, reason, and prophecy. Now, that sounds like a bold statement until we say, as compared to what? Staying on the financial treadmill, being exasperated by working as hard as we can and never feel like we have anything left, always dealing with banks and interest rates and credit cards and inflation and economic environments that we don't control, worrying about politics when we have very little control over that. I mean, the list goes on and on. As compared to what?
Yeah, this is a teaching tool, but it really sort of brings all of this into focus. If you are, let me just give you an example. If you are 40 years old right now, and let's say you have 25 working years left, and you're making $100,000 a year. That means for the next 25 years, roughly, you're going to have $2.5 million flow through your hands. What you have to ask yourself is, how much of that money do I want to keep in my family? That's what controlling the banking function means. And we can teach you how to keep all of that in your family, plus some.
Hey, that's perfect. At the very end of this first page, on page 11, Nelson says, this book is all about how to create your own banking system so that you can control 100% of your needs, becoming your own banker. Give it your close attention, and it can make a radical improvement in your financial future. That is not hyperbolic. We are living that. We have members all over the US that are living that. It is a paradigm shift that requires the willingness to unlearn what you thought was true and replace it with truths that will benefit you and what matters to you the most. And those are the rules of the game. We can teach you those things, but we can't teach anyone anything if they aren't willing to say, there may be something new I need to learn. And here's a good way to test that. If you're completely content and happy doing what you're doing and you don't think it could get any better, then this isn't for you. Simple as that. If you think at all what you're doing could improve, bring more peace of mind, more value to your family, more legacy, more heritage for what you want to leave one day to your kids or to your businesses or whatever, there is no cost to this other than time, energy, and a willingness to learn. That's all we ask.
Yeah, let me just say, um, if you're interested in getting a copy of Becoming Your Own Banker, we do have that on our company website, unlimitedlifeconcepts.com. But we'll make you a deal on that book. If you read it and you don't believe it was worth the $25 that you paid for the book, we'll buy it back from you.
Yeah. We'll be glad to buy it back from you because we're shipping them out all over the U.S. all the time. So we need inventory.
So really what you have to ask yourself, and our mentor, Chris Bay, asked us this question several years ago, would you spend $0 just to see what's possible?
Good stuff. I think that's a great place to end it, Nate. This is a practice in how we think about how we think, which was one of Nelson's key principles, which was rethink your thinking. And it starts with thinking long range, not being afraid to capitalize. He says, don't steal the peas. We're going to bring that into clarity on what that means later on. Don't do business with banks is number 4, and rethink your thinking. Okay. It's all about knowing the rules of the game, and you will know the rules of the game and then decide if you want to implement them. And that's really the power of this, is becoming your own banker, coming from 2 knuckleheads from East Texas who don't know anything more than most people. We just were very fortunate to be introduced to this book in a season of life that we were searching, and the Lord put it in our paths and put us with great mentors. And we want to be that for anybody else. And we're an open book, Nate. Like, we'll tell you where we've struggled, where we've failed, why this is still the most foundational thing we can think about as it relates to money, and what we're doing to learn and grow every day. And so we get to make relationships to do that, just like our partner Nate Brock does, and how he's doing that every day with lots of young entrepreneurs. So we don't take lightly that you're taking time to listen to this, because a big part of what Nelson talks about and becoming your own banker is all about how you think. And sometimes unlearning is necessary, and that's good. The world teaches us that unlearning is bad a lot of times because it's uncomfortable, and it keeps us right where we are, even if we're frustrated with that. So we hope you have a blessed day. We're going to be walking through this very thoroughly. Sometimes it'll be all 3 of us. Sometimes it'll be just 2 of us in some kind of combination. But what we do know is that this can impact your life in ways that you could not imagine if you decide to put in the work of unlearning and then relearning and thinking long range. So until the next one, we'll catch you. Hope you have a great day.